Hey everybody, it's Jesse. If you're new to the show, I live stream my work. It's just my normal work that I do every day. The whole point is to show what a front end developer does, even the mistakes that I make. Hopefully, I don't make too many mistakes. But I just like people to see that you don't have to be perfect to get a job as a developer, especially people who are just starting out. Today, we're going to do something that took me a while to figure out how to do. It's really cool and useful. And if you want to be able to do server-side rendering and make API calls, then this is one way to do it. It's not the only way, but this is the way that I found that's the easiest for me. Before we get started, somebody asked in a live stream how long this is gonna be. About a half an hour. If there's a lot of people in the chat asking questions, sometimes I go over, but I don't think I've ever gone longer than 45 minutes. But the code portion of it will be over in about a half an hour, so at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Before we get started, just want to give a shout out to my wife. It's our 10th anniversary, so sometimes she watches the show. So in case she's watching, happy anniversary. I went over this yesterday, the schedule for next week, so I'm not going to go over it in depth. I just wanted to put it up here so you could see it. I'm going to be at SyntaxCon in South Carolina next week, the end of next week. So my schedule's going to be off, and I have a lot of meetings early in the week. So we're going to live stream Monday, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it Wednesday. I'll try. And then I'm going to get in touch with the people who are organizing SyntaxCon and see if they're cool with me doing some live streaming, maybe some interviews from SyntaxCon. So I'll let you know when I hear back from them and see if I can do that. All right, so let's... Oh, thanks. Julian said congrats. What time is there now? It's 2 p.m. where I'm at. All right, so let me flip over here and show you. Let me show you the page that we're going to be putting this on, and I'm going to show you the data. You can see the data on the screen right now. Okay, so I'll pull this page over. So this is a news page. There's nothing on it right now. It's going to be a blog style page. Someone in the live chat asked NYC. I'm in the same time zone as New York City, but I'm actually in Ohio. I'm on the very eastern edge of Ohio, so I'm pretty close to Pittsburgh. It's about a half-hour drive for me to get to Pittsburgh. So you may be more familiar with where Pittsburgh is than where Steubenville is, which is the city that I'm in right now. All right, somebody says hello from Latvia. Cool. Yeah. So usually I do have people give shout out where they're from. So I don't know. The last week people just started doing that, and I thought it was cool. So if you want to, put in the live stream where you're from, and then at the end of the show, I'll go through and just say where everybody was from. So this is the news page. Yeah, like I said, it's just going to be a blog page. So what we want to do is we want to get data from a WordPress installation that's on a totally different server, and we want to display that data here using the WordPress API. I'm not going to go over how to set up anything in WordPress, but the API is now, it comes with WordPress core, so you don't need any extra plugins or anything. It should just work. I don't think... Hey, somebody's from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm going to be in Charleston next week, so Joey on the live chat, I'll be in Charleston. I'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week for the SyntaxCon conference. You should check it out if you can, if you have time. So, like I said, it's actually super easy. I don't even think you have to switch on the API. I think it's just on by default. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I started working with it, well, it's probably been a year, maybe a little more than a year, probably a year and a half since I started working with the WordPress API. You did have to install some plugins, but now it's easier to work with. So we want to grab that data, but we don't just want to pull it in, on the client side, because if we pull in that data, on the client side in the browser, it'll be fine for a regular person viewing it. But if a search engine wants to check out your page, they're going to see a blank page if all your content's coming from an API. Search engines are, well, some of them. I mean, Google's search crawler can handle some JavaScript pretty well, but it doesn't stick around long enough to get an API call back. It doesn't matter how fast the call is. I've tested it before with just like test data that should have loaded almost instantaneously, and you still it doesn't work with search engines. So the only way that I know of to make this site search engine friendly is to actually make the API call on the server. Okay, so we're going to run Node on the server. Right now it's just a local development environment, so it's just on my local machine. I'll do a live stream maybe sometime next week if I can about actually setting up the server. But on the server, we're going to make the call, and then we're going to render the HTML based on that data we get from the API on the server, and what's going to get sent to the client on that first load is all the markup. So to make this a little bit easier, we are using Next.js. So check out Next. I have links to everything that I'm going to talk about in the description. So if I mention something you're not familiar with, check out the description for this video and the links. I do have this repo up now. It's on GitHub. The link is there. The last couple of shows I didn't have the repo up yet, but now you can check everything out. So we don't really need to see this until we finish the code now. So I'm going to move this off just to show you what the data is going to look like. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, this is what WordPress sends back. If I hit this URL, it sends me back, some JSON. All we're going to get today is I want this title and I want the content. I don't really need anything else. We'll see in later videos, I'll start to get really detailed in what I'm getting from here and actually get rid of all the stuff I don't need just to make it, just a little bit faster. But for now, this is just what it looks like. I have nothing special. The only thing I added special in terms of parameters on the end, I don't know if you can see that. I did add posts per page 100, but I think I only have 4 demo posts set up. So it doesn't even make sense. I'm going to move this off to the side. We won't really need to see that. We'll only need to bring that back if something goes wrong. Alright, so now let's check out the code. And we'll go to our page news.js. If you're not familiar with how Next works, Next basically is a way to let you get started with React very quickly. It comes built in with a lot of cool stuff like server-side rendering, and all your pages in your site, all you have to do is make a file in this pages folder, and then the routing just works. It handles all the routing for you. So this is our news page. All we have here, we're importing some components, just some basic things. Our footer, our title. We have this head tag is custom for Next. So we imported here. It's Next head. So this is not exactly, you won't have something like this in every React site that you do. At least not in the same way that Next does it. The only different thing we had from previous shows is we've now added this import isomorphic fetch. So I'm gonna look back at the live stream. I'm gonna ignore the live stream for a little bit just to get through some of this section, and I'll check back in later. So if you're asking a question and I don't respond right away, I will towards the end. So if you're not familiar with fetch, fetch is kind of the newest way to make calls, to APIs. Basically, it's what you would have done with Ajax if you're using jQuery or just a normal XHR. Now you can use fetch for, and it's super simple. You'll see the code in a second when I type it out. The only thing is it's not supported everywhere yet. I mean, obviously, older browsers, pretty much every version of Internet Explorer. I mean, that's not really new stuff. Later on, I'm sure, most browsers will have support, but for right now, you have to use polyfills for fetch. And in particular, if we want to use fetch with Node on the server side, we can't just use fetch, normally. Because it's normally a browser thing, and Node is not running in the browser. So we use this npm module isomorphic fetch. It comes packaged with Next, so that's why we can just use it like this. I didn't have to install it separately. If you looked at the package JSON file, it's not in the list of things. So it's nice that it comes with this. There are some newer npm modules that do this as well. Fetch works for me. I might check out some of the isomorphic fetch works for me. I might check out some of the new ones later on if I think it'll provide an advantage. If you know of any of newer versions of this that you like, let me know. Let me know what's good about them. So let's get started. I'm just going to start typing out what we need. So Next comes with this get initial props function. That's anything inside get initial props. That's going to run on the server side. So that call is going to run. But then if you switch over to client-side routing later on, it'll also run that, when you're doing. So with Next, you can do server-side first, then switch to client-side once things are loaded. You can just stick with server-side so that every time you click a link, it's a complete page refresh. You can you do it however you want to do it. You can do custom routing. But right now we're going to start with, and this is pretty basic. This is pretty much how it is in the Next documentation, so you can check that out too if you want to learn more about it. We're going to get initial props. Okay, and I think you'll be really amazed at how simple this is. I know I was, because like I said, I tried for a long time to get server-side routing to work with React, and I just couldn't find a good tutorial that was at my level at the time. Sometimes you find a tutorial and it's just too advanced, but this was at my level when I needed it. Alright, so I'm just going to make a couple of variables here. If you're not familiar with this syntax of using const instead of var, this is ES6 syntax or ES 2015. So this is just, a short explanation is when I make something a const, it's never going to change. I can't change this variable later on. There's some other things with hoisting that happens when you use const or let, but that's kind of beyond what we're talking about today. Alright, so we're going to use a URL, and I'm going to copy and paste in that URL that I showed you just a minute ago where we're going to get that data. So I like to, you can type the URL straight into your fetch function, but I like to keep it a little bit more clean with some variables. And I usually like to have my parameters separate. It's not going to be really obvious right now why we need that, but later on we're going to have like some really long strings of parameters that we're going to add to this. So it's better to separate them and easier to read. So for now we can just add posts, because the demo WordPress site that I'm going to pull this data from, it only has posts right now. Later on we'll set up WordPress to have lots of custom post types, and we'll pull different things. And now we're going to get to, these first two variables. This was just kind of the way I organize things. Now we're getting to, the important part that you really need. So this syntax, this part of it, the next 3 lines are going to be pretty much straight from Next.js, straight from their documentation. Oh wait, let's see. Okay, so this is it for fetch. I mean, think back if you've done, especially if you've worked with XHR or Ajax, think about how many lines it took you to accomplish an API call. This is all you need now. And if I didn't put them in, these variables here, you could just put this whole URL right here. It's so much simpler. So if you haven't used fetch yet, use it. I may do a tutorial video later on about how to set up your site to be able to use fetch in the browser and support older browsers, and how to set up that polyfill. I just glanced over at the live chat. Somebody asked a good question. Why is the head and the metadata inside that div? Yeah, so this is weird to have a div here, but I needed to have everything. So basically I needed to have the body tag have these styles on it. But I have no way, at least no way that I know of with this setup, to directly put something on the body tag. So instead of looking it up and trying to figure out how to do it, I thought I'd just try putting a div here around everything and see if it worked. And it did work. So I would guess that there's a better way to do this, but since I have such a short timeline for getting this site live, I'm just going to stick with this for now because it works, and then hopefully later on find a better way to do it. But this looks a little weird, but it does actually work. Alright, so let's finish this off, right? We're going to get JSON back. Alright, so we're going to save that in a variable called data. You can call that whatever you want. Okay, and then all we're going to do now is just return. We're going to turn that data. Okay, now what this is going to do is this data is now going to be available as a prop. So we can go down here, and yesterday I explained how to use props. So it's basically going to be the same concept here. We're going to have this data in as a prop, but I'm going to show you how I will be using this. I'm usually not going to make an API call to just pull one piece of data. I'm going to make an API call to pull a bunch of stuff, in this case a bunch of posts, and I want to loop through all those posts and then render them, a big list of them. So I'm just going to type everything here for simplicity. Normally you'd want to make another component and pass it to the component, and we'll see that later on, but for now we don't need all that. We just want to make sure that this works, make sure we get everything on the page that we need. So we'll go this props, and if I am going too fast, I'll answer some questions in a little bit. The same person asked the question about the div around everything. Says as long as we all agree that it's a hack. Definitely it is a hack. But sometimes that's the way it is. You need to get it done, and you need to get it done very quickly, so you have to resort to a hack. So let's go this props and then data, right? So we named that data, and we could have named it whatever we wanted. But data is a nice kind of generic term. And we want to use map. So we're going to use a map function, and we're going to call it a post. Since we're getting posts, it makes sense. You can call this whatever you want, so that each time they loop through a different piece of data, that's going to be a different post in our case. We'll probably name this something different when we start using custom post types. For each different post type, we'll name it that, and that helps keep things pretty clear. I'm also going to put this variable here just to keep track of what number we're on. You'll see why I'm going to use that in a second. And all we need now is just to put in some of the HTML that's going to contain this data. So we want to return. And if you're not familiar at all with React, all we just did here when we put this curly bracket here is, now anything inside these curly brackets is JavaScript. We can type plain JavaScript in here. So we've kind of started with JavaScript inside this return. Now it's basically HTML with a few differences, but pretty much straight HTML. And then now we've dropped back into JavaScript inside of here. So if we want to output HTML again, we need to return it. So we're just going to add another return, and we're going to just start out. We're just going to make a div to hold this data. We're going to give it a class name. You can't just put class. You'll get an error if you try to just put class. You need to put class name. There are a few other properties that you need to do some different things with. Source set is one of them. You have to type src and then capital SET. If you're making a form or something and you use the for attribute, I think you have to do HTML for with a capital F. So I think they have all those listed on the React website as to, which properties are supported. But if you're getting weird errors, for me at least, a lot of my errors are resulting from forgetting to put class name instead of class. So let's we'll just make this a row. We're using Materialize framework. So a lot of these styles are built into that framework. And then now here's where that I variable is going to come in. For React likes to have a key. If you're going to have, a bunch of divs that all have kind of the same thing in them that you're iterating over, they like to have a key. So, oops, I messed that up. I don't want it to be a string. I want it to be a variable. So let's drop down. So you see, notice now we're in that return again. So if I want to do JavaScript, I do have to put these brackets again. It can get confusing. We're switching back and forth between, what looks like HTML and JavaScript. So we're just going to close that. We're going to close that div. Inside that div, we're just going to make an h1, just a normal h1 tag to have our title. Remember, we just want to get the title of the post and the content. So we're going to go post. See, so now that we're in here and we've named this post, we can just go straight into post, and inside the post, we want to get the title. All right, title, and then if you remember, it actually dropped down one more level. So the way WordPress formats the JSON, you can't just say title, you have to go to rendered. And that's it. That should output the title. Now for our content, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'll explain why. I'm going to give this a class of flow text. Materialize has this flow text class that resizes the text based on your screen width, kind of a responsive font thing, and that'll make the text a little bit more readable for us. But I'm not going to put the data here. I'm actually going to use this, and this is not as scary as it sounds. Alright, so I'm going to use dangerously set inner HTML. So we're dropping back down into JavaScript here to do this. Okay, so this is built into React. I can't spell today. Okay, so let me explain why we're doing this. Let's pull this back, this data back in. I'm going to switch over really quick. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So since we're trying to pull this content rendered, if you notice, there is HTML in here. All right, there's a p tag in here, and there could be anything, right? This is WordPress, so somebody could type in, a lot of different tags. Think if you had like ULs, unordered lists, LIs, you could see there could be a lot of HTML. If we just put this here, like we did for the title, we're going to see that markup, and we don't want to see that markup. I'm just checking out the live stream. Yeah, I know this seems pretty harsh, but if you have control of where you're getting the data from, and you know what's going to be put in there, because you're the one that's going to be putting it in there, or somebody on your team that you trust, then there's really nothing wrong with doing this. If you're just pulling in data from some other source that you have no control over, yeah, then maybe you might want to think about not doing this. So you might end up pulling in some harmful code. You don't want to do it. But in this case, this WordPress site is on my servers. I'm actually the only person at this point that even has access to the admin panel. So it's okay. It's not as crazy as it sounds. It just sounds really harsh to put that in there. All right, but you can see why we need to do that, because we're going to have HTML tags inside this content. So we need to render those tags as well. All right, so I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to show you the page, and we're going to see. All right, now I'm going to bring this in, and as I said at the beginning, I want you to see all my mistakes. So you can see we have a mistake. It's saying cannot read property map of undefined. So somehow I've messed up in the API call. So let's check this out. I do want to just refresh this quickly to see. Here's a tip. I've had this happen to me so many times, I'm not sure why. When I just hit save and it does the hot reload, sometimes things don't work. So before you start to despair, do a refresh. Sometimes it will actually work after the refresh, and for whatever reason it just didn't work. I'm sure there's some good reason why the hot reload doesn't work for some things, but I'm glad that worked, and we tried that before I went back in. So if you can see, this part that was blank before, now has our titles. I'm using the Bacon Ipsum for this test data. It has all our titles, and then it has our content. Okay. And that's how you pull in data. I want to let's view this source. Oh, this is going to be ugly. I don't know if we'll be able to get to it. But basically, if you view the source, you'll see all the HTML there. Here we go. You see all this HTML here. Normally, if you have a page that's making an API call and it's on the client side, you won't see all the markup in a view source. You'll see it if you inspect it in DevTools, but not a view source. So this just shows this is what search engines will see. They're seeing all your data. Okay, before I go to the live chat, I just want to ask you guys, you notice this is different from what it was a couple of days ago? It used to have an overlay, this kind of white overlay over the entire image, and then the title was centered vertically and horizontally. I liked how that looked, but after a meeting with the people I'm making the site for, they wanted to see the full color of this image. They didn't want this overlay on it at all. I don't really want to put the title down here and have, force the rest of the content even farther down the page. I mean, because let's see it, a normal screen is going to be more like this for most people. So you can see it's already kind of messed up the formatting. I do have it zoomed in though. Let me take that back down to normal size. Okay, so my question to you is, I don't like how this looks, obviously. Do you know some way that we can still make this readable and also keep the image, for the most part without an overlay? So I'm thinking maybe of having this fade a little bit more. We'll see. I've thought about just removing this section entirely and just having a title and then trying to work these images in some other way. So let me know in the comments or here in the live chat. I'd really appreciate your opinion on that. I've already spent a lot more time than I wanted to just kind of trying things out, and nothing has looked right to me. All right. So now, if you don't want to stick around for me to go through the questions in the live chat, now's the time to leave. It's already been a half an hour. Otherwise, if you have a little bit more time, I'm going to go through the live chat. I'm going to read out where everybody's from, and I'm going to answer questions. If you have any questions that you didn't get in the live chat, you can put them in the comments. If you don't want to put your question in the comments for everybody to read, just direct message me on Twitter. My link to my Twitter account is in the description. All right, so I'm scrolling up to the top now of the live chat. And let's see, we have someone from Guatemala and people saying congratulations. Thanks for saying congratulations. If you missed it at the beginning, I said it's my 10-year wedding anniversary today. So thanks for the congratulations, guys. Somebody from Latvia, Cherry Valley, Illinois, Columbia, Charleston, London, England, Baghdad, Atlanta, Tokyo, Canada, Brazil, it's Belo Horizonte, Brazil, Cordoba, Argentina, Albania. Okay, we have a question. What's the difference between isomorphic fetch and a normal request to an API? So Marius asked this question. So a normal request, normally, I don't know about you, but I would say all the API requests that I had done up until the point when I started using React in this way was I just made it on the client side. So usually I would use Ajax because most of the sites I worked on were already loading jQuery for some other reason. So I would just use Ajax and I would make the request like that. I did start to switch over and use fetch, but all those were on the client side. So everything would load, the JavaScript would load on the page, and then the call would be made, but search engines couldn't see the data from that call. When we're using isomorphic fetch, isomorphic is a term that's used, at least in web development, to mean that it's like something that runs on the client and the server both. Sometimes they call it universal, so you'll hear those kind of used interchangeably. But to say it's an isomorphic fetch just means that it is fetch, so it's basically a newer version of an AJAX call that can run on the server. In this case, it's running. We're running Node on the server, so it's a version of fetch that can run on Node, and that's necessary, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to render all the content that you want the search engines to see on the server, and then send it all out on that first load. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question. If not, comment, and I can answer it in more depth later on. All right, we have somebody from South Africa said they're enjoying the stream. Thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Kazakhstan. Fortaleza, Brazil. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing the places that you're from. I'm trying my best. India. All right, somebody from India says, I'll try to pronounce Abhishek from India is saying that these videos keep me a hell of a lot motivated and helps keep the procrastination on hold. Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. I'll only keep doing these if I think you guys are getting some benefit. And sorry, guys and girls, I don't mean any offense by using that. Yeah. So let me know if you guys think, if you people think that it's useful to you, please let me know, and that's motivation for me to keep doing it and try to do a better job. If you have any advice for me on how to make these better, please let me know. Okay, somebody says, so don't use React Router when during server-side rendering. Yeah, I haven't worked with React Router enough to even be able to address that, because Next handles a lot of the routing. We're going to do a little bit of custom routing, and we'll get into that probably next week. But I don't know enough about it, so I can't really comment on that. What place is your desktop background image from? What is my desktop background image right now? I don't know. Maybe this is the default that comes with Mac. So I'm using Mac OS X Sierra as the operating system. So I guess that's the default. I don't know. Let me know if anybody else is using that. I think that's the default. And I'm assuming it's that they're talking about the Sierra Nevada mountain ranges here in the U.S. I don't really know. Usually the last couple operating systems for Mac have been named after mountains, and then the default image is that mountain. Okay, we had some stuff. I answered some of this. Okay, somebody said we can move the head into header.js component. That's what I thought. So I actually tried to move the stuff in the header. Let me bring that over so we know what we're talking about. So we had somebody in the live chat mention that we can move all this head stuff into a component. So here's what I tried to do. I moved all this to a component, and then I just loaded that component here, and it didn't work. Basically, the page actually did load. I didn't get the pink error screen, but all this stuff that I was trying to bring in, the style sheets and the fonts, none of them loaded. Neither the title didn't load, none of this loaded. So I don't know what the problem is. I would definitely like to just put this all in a component. The one reason why I don't mind it being here is that I can customize this, although I certainly could have that as a prop in the component and pass that in. So one thing I could try that I didn't think about until now is, what if I just copied all of this, including this head component, into a component, and then I imported this next head into that component. I don't know. That might work. I'm gonna have to try that. So thanks for mentioning that, because it kind of made me rethink what I did and realize maybe there is a way to make it work. So maybe I'll try that after the live stream today. Okay. Mobbin92 says, I see that the site includes the style sheets, fonts, and scripts. Do we have to do that for every page again and again? Isn't there some kind of templating mechanism? Yeah, I mean, that's basically kind of like the last comment. Yeah, I think there should be a better way to do this. I was reading through the Next.js documentation to see if there was something like that. I remember reading at some point about some layout component, and I'm assuming that it can do something like that. I just need to read more into it. From the last time I used Next.js on a project, they've had a lot of updates and a lot of new features. So I need to go back in and kind of relearn it. What are the best ways to use it now? So at the time when I first used it, I didn't find a better way to do this. For right now, since I don't have that many pages, it's faster for me to just do this. But if I had a larger site, I would definitely try to figure out some way to just put this in a component and have it, templating, like you said. But for now, once again, because of the very short time frame that the site needs to launch, I'm probably not going to have time to find the answer to this and to really mess with it. I wish I had more time to really do this, the best way that I can. Okay, side effect and React app. Okay, we have from side effect and React app, I use Redux Saga or Redux Stunk. I've heard about Redux. I haven't worked with Redux yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about it and watched some videos on it. So, yeah, definitely. From the little I know about it, I can recommend it as being something really useful to use with React. Okay, almost to the bottom of the live chat. I'm seeing the comments now when I use that dangerously set inner HTML. Someone says they hate WordPress but need WordPress. I have a somewhat similar feeling about WordPress. I like how easy it is for people who don't know code to edit things in WordPress, and that's why I use it. In this case, that is kind of why I'm using it, because we're going to have some graduate students who don't know anything about code who are going to need to input some data. But I don't really like working with the PHP and the templating system within WordPress, and I'm not really interested in leveling up my PHP skills at this point. I'd rather work on my JavaScript skills. So that's why I'm using WordPress like this. If there were some kind of less heavy content management system that I could pull data from that was as stable and as user-friendly as WordPress, I would definitely try that out. As I scroll down now, it seems like the same reason. They said they use it for clients, and that's actually that's it. It's really easy for clients to manage. Someone asked, Anthony Lopez asked, why is coding so fun? I think coding is fun because you're building something. You're building something that usually helps people in some way. You can build things that are beautiful. When you build, you get immediate feedback, which is really awesome. And if you mess it up, it doesn't cost you anything. You just you just undo whatever you did. You go back to the last commit. So that's really cool. I enjoy building things in the real world too, but if you mess something up when you're building things in the real world, then you usually can't reuse it, and you have to go buy more materials. I think it's awesome that you can just try things out when you're building a website or an app and not have to worry about messing it up. You just make another branch for your code, with Git, try out whatever crazy thing you want to do. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, well, you just go back to your original branch and leave it for later on and try to figure it out later. I think that's cool for me, and I really like learning all the latest stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's not like that for everybody, but at least for me, that's what I can think of. Just in a minute or two here of why I like coding so much. Somebody asks if it's a pretty common practice. So Joey asks, is it pretty common practice to just use WordPress for its backend API and build your own front end? I don't think it's common yet. So I first heard about this probably maybe 2 years ago or maybe a year and a half ago, and it wasn't really common. They were saying that the WordPress API at that point wasn't stable and it could change, so you really shouldn't use it. But I found some sites that were actually using it, in production. So I decided to give it a shot, and I built a few sites with it they're actually live and they're working well, and they have been working, with no downtime for months. I've had no problem with it. So yeah, it's not common yet, but I definitely think it could end up being common. I have a project in mind to make a very easy way for people who use WordPress to use React as kind of the front end without them having to know that much about React. So it would be limited in that you basically be limited to your default pages and posts in WordPress, but they would really just need to plug in their URL, and then the React part of it would just kind of take over and put out the data. So it would be easier for people. They would have to still know a little bit about a little bit of JavaScript, but it would be much easier than trying to do it all yourself. So maybe I'll get to the point where I have some time to make that, and maybe you can help me out with that. I'll certainly have that be open source on GitHub if I do it. Okay, almost to the bottom. I was almost to the bottom. Maybe I think I had some more people typing in, and now the bottom is getting farther away of this live chat. All right, so okay, now thanks for all this advice on the text, the title text. Maybe fade the sides. I'm gonna try that. So Anthony suggested maybe fade the sides. Maybe another black bar under the image with the white text in it. Make it black. Put a background on only the text. Yeah, I see what you guys are saying. I'll definitely try these out. Change the color, drop shadow. Yeah, I've done that before. I really hate to add a drop shadow since I'm not using it anywhere else. But I'll have to try these out and see what they look like. I think that oval fade, maybe that would work too. Okay, so somebody asked Mern.js versus Next.js. I don't have enough experience with Mern to comment on that. I like Next.js. They seem to add new features really quickly and be really responsive on GitHub when you raise an issue. So I don't have a problem with it. There are some things about Next that I wish it could do that it can't right now, or it's possible. I just don't know how to do it. And I'll probably get to some of those things maybe next week in the videos or the week after. But I don't know. I don't really know very much at all about Mern, so I guess you fill me in the comments and let me know what you think. So we have somebody from Romania, from Poland, Orlando, Philippines, India, New Jersey, Saudi Arabia, India, Russia. Okay, we have a question here from Josh. So Josh began coding about 1 week ago. Any advice for feeling overwhelmed at the beginning and not giving up? Oh man, yeah. That feeling of being overwhelmed you'll have that even after you're not a beginner anymore. But it gets better. You don't have it as often, and you kind of know how to push through it. Don't feel like you have to learn everything all at once. If you watch a YouTube video or read a blog post on some concept and you're just totally lost, don't worry about it. Watch it again. Watch it 2 or 3 times. Practice a little bit and then come back to it. It'll be a great feeling for you when you come back to a video that made no sense to you, a month or two ago, and now you totally understand it. So I would say just keep trying. Don't try to do things that are way beyond your level. Take it kind of slower. Don't be. I'm always going back and doing tutorials that are like beginner tutorials, and I usually fly through a lot of the stuff, but I always pick up something useful that I didn't know. So I'd say don't have too much pride to to go back to the beginning and kind of try to relearn some things. You'll always pick up something new. I mean, don't spend all your time in the beginner tutorials, but I'm with you in feeling overwhelmed at times. Usually, at some point in a project, I hit a point where I just think, like, how did I get myself to this point? How am I ever going to get this done on time and have it work? And you can't give up. You still got to you got to ship the site. It has to go live. You're being paid to do that. So you just work through it. Just break it up into small tasks. Use resources online. Use Stack Overflow. Ask questions, on YouTube videos. And if you know somebody else who codes, have them take a look at your code. But, I mean, I guess the best advice I could give you is just don't give up and realize that the overwhelmed feeling is normal. And you'll get better, and that feeling will slowly start to go away and not be as bad. So hopefully that helps. All right, we have somebody from Salvador, Brazil. Also, if anybody else has any advice for someone just starting out feeling overwhelmed, please post that in the comments. Somebody from Seattle, Turkey. Okay, so we have some people commenting back saying take little steps. Somebody else knows the feeling. Someone said it inspired me watching you. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm glad it's providing some value to you. Please save this stream. Yeah, all the streams. Somebody just said, please save the stream. All the streams, pretty much like 5 minutes after the stream is over, they go. They're available on the freeCodeCamp channel. I do have some other videos on my own channel, and that's linked in the description. I'm going to do some pre-recorded tutorials and put that on that channel as well, but I'm probably not going to have time until after this launch. The site launches later this month. And then, so if you have any requests for tutorials, that'll be kind of shorter, more to the point tutorials, let me know if you want to learn about anything. And if I know about it, I'll make a video. Well, what can you do if you have many pages? So somebody... Mobbin92 asks about what can you do if you have many pages, and I think this is referring back to that, having all the whole content of the head tag in every page. I don't know the answer to that right now. I'm assuming there is an answer, and I just don't know it yet, and I haven't taken the time to try to find it yet. Same style as the nav menu. Okay, so we have another recommendation for the nav menu. I'll skip over those for now, and I'll read them because that's more of advice directly to me, and I'll try out these different things. All right, we have another question. Mads Jensen is asking, studying web development at my school, but when I showed them the website freeCodeCamp, they said that they coded wrong. So I'm so confused. They say you use too much div, HTML5. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm not sure. if you're using something like Bootstrap or like I'm using Materialize, sometimes that's the way you have to do it. You use a lot of divs. I'm sure there's different philosophies on how you should structure your HTML. I don't know that I'm in a position to comment on which one is the best or which one's right or wrong. I mean, to me, at the end of the day, you got to make a site that's user friendly to your users. If it's also coded beautifully so that somebody can look at your code and it's awesome, then that's great too. But especially if you're just starting out, which people who are using freeCodeCamp are usually just starting out. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if this is good advice or not, but I would say don't worry as much about your style of coding. Don't fret about indentation and how many divs you're using. Try to learn the basics. Try to make some cool stuff and get yourself excited about coding. Later on when you get a lot better, then you can worry about those tiny details like that. But to me, I think sometimes people spend way too much time on those tiny little details that most people will never even notice in your code, because the majority of people looking at your site are not developers. So you guys can weigh in the comments on that. Let me know if you disagree. But I would say, don't worry about that. freeCodeCamp's going to give you a lot of good advice and things, and I'm not sure why they're saying that it's coding wrong. Okay. I think we're at the end now. Is there any other another question? Is there any other CMS solution you use in your projects besides WordPress? I have used in the past. I've used Joomla and I've used Drupal. I found both of them to be less user friendly, both for developers and for the clients. So I don't use those unless I really have to. Like if I need to work on an existing site and I can't, and it doesn't make sense to switch it over. I have tried out some other like kind of newer, really small content management systems. There are some that actually are built with Node that I'm really excited about, but I haven't found one that's at that level that WordPress is of just being refined and user friendly and stable. Nothing has as big of a user base to be able to ask questions to people. So I'd really love to find something, especially, it'd be great if I could find a content management system that was built with Node. I think that would be ideal, because if you're already going to use Node, you're using JavaScript, if you're going to work with React, then you can just use JavaScript to work with your content management system as well. It could be a lot more lightweight if you don't intend to actually have templating directly with that, if you're just going to use it for the API. So I'm still kind of waiting for something to emerge as the front runner in that area of, I guess, what you would call a headless content management system, where you just got things through the API and is built with JavaScript. That would be awesome. If anybody knows about something like that, put in the comments, please, and I'll try it out when I get a chance. Okay, somebody's asking about ES6 training. There's a lot of research. I don't know off the top of my head where to send you for a good resource for ES6 training. I know there's a lot of good videos. Maybe you know what? If you're still watching, Saurav Kumar's asked for ES6 training. If you're still watching, comment in this video, and then I'll see that later on, and maybe I can send you some links to some of the training stuff that I've used to learn ES6. Okay, someone says, yes, that helped. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad it helped. Okay, somebody said making your code readable is still important. Yes, definitely. It is definitely important to make your code readable. I would just, and this is entirely my opinion, but and this is coming from someone who primarily works solo on projects. I don't work with other people a lot right now on my projects, so I rarely need to have other people look at my code. So I'm in a different position than a lot of people who are working on a team where it's more important. So, take that into consideration with my advice. But I would say the focus for me is always on what is the user going to see and making that the best. In second place, in terms of priorities, is making my code readable. I'm not saying I ignore that part. I do try to make it readable, but if it's coming down to the wire and I don't have time to do everything, I'll always choose to make the user experience a little bit better at the expense of readability of the code. And if I have time later, I'll go back in and try to clean that up. But that's just me. Okay, instead of WordPress, you can use Ponzu written in Go. Okay, I haven't heard about Ponzu, so maybe I'll check that out. Thank you. Somebody asked if they should learn jQuery as soon as possible or first learn JS. Well, I think it depends on what you want to do. If you want to go and learn React, don't worry about jQuery. Learn JS as well. If you need to make money right now, and let's say you're doing some freelance work, there are a lot of sites that use jQuery, and if you want to work on those sites to update them, then you'll need to know some jQuery. So it really depends on where you're at. If you get hired somewhere and their site uses jQuery, obviously you need to learn that. So I don't really know where you're at, but if you don't need to use jQuery right now, then learn the basics of JavaScript. Okay, but you never know. I mean, sometimes I've done a lot of work that I didn't really want to do, and but you got to do it. You got to pay the bills. You got to feed your family. So you learn what you have to learn to do that. So I'm not going to judge you for going with jQuery if you need to. All right, so this is a good comment here, and we are actually towards the end. So John Heiner says, you'll pretty much find devs saying everything and its opposite. One of the misconceptions I think newbies have is that there is one way to do things, but there's an ongoing debate about most things. I love that comment. So John, if you're still listening, thank you. That's a wonderful comment. It's entirely right. When I was really new, I was always trying to find, what is the best way? And I'd worry, should I be learning this? Is this the best thing? Is this the best way? But that's not how it is. There's so many ways of getting the same thing done. It's more about your style and what you like to do or what your client needs at the time. I'm a big advocate of using the best tools that you know of for that particular job. So you're not going to use, I'm not going to use WordPress and React, this combo, for every single site that I do, for every client. That's not the answer. Sometimes you don't need that. So don't be so worried about the absolute right way to do things. You'll eventually just keep learning, and eventually you will find you'll get better, and you'll find one of the best ways. But like John said, there's a debate about what the best way is usually. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked if I'm self-taught. This is officially my longest video ever. So if anybody's still watching at this point, we have 55 viewers. Is that? I'm looking at the analytics. So thanks for sticking around for so long. I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon because it's my anniversary and I want to get out of work here at a decent time. But I'll answer these last couple questions. Are you self-taught? Yes, I am self-taught. My degree is in business administration. I specialized in economics and finance. I did take, so I'll say this. In high school, I took a course where we learned basic HTML and CSS. And that was a long time. That was maybe, I took the course 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. In college, I took a C++ programming course. I started a course in web development and then I dropped it halfway through. And now it's crazy that this is what I do for a living. But that's it. That's the only formal education that I've had. I think there's value in computer science degree, and I know that there are big gaps in my understanding of computer science because I've learned on my own. But in terms of me getting my job done, I know a lot. I know what I need to know to get my job done, and my clients are satisfied. I've thankfully I've never had a client that was not satisfied with their site and, let's say, didn't want to pay me or got their site redone. So I've been really lucky in that regard, but I have been self-taught. So if you're interested in knowing kind of my route that I've taken to teach myself, comment below, comment and ask me below, and then I can kind of give you some of the resources that I found most helpful. I will say this: I don't think I've spent more than $30 in the last 10 years on resources for learning how to do web development. The best resources I've found are free. Joey asked if I'm a freelancer. I do some freelance work now. I'm employed full-time at Franciscan University as a front-end developer. I occasionally do freelance work, but it needs to be a project that I'm really interested in, because it does take time away from my family. I have a wife, I have 4 kids, so it has to be either what I'm interested in, or let's say they offer to pay me a lot of money and I just can't turn it down. Otherwise, I'd rather spend that time with my kids. I don't know about all of you, but I have a tendency to get kind of really into what I'm doing in coding, and if I don't watch myself, I can spend all my time doing coding and thinking about coding, and it's easy to ignore your family, which in the grand scheme of things is more important. Especially, my kids are all little. I don't want to miss that. So the freelancing is kind of taking a back burner now. Okay, someone says, to be fair, React for WordPress is already overkill. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, so I'm not saying I disagree with that. In this case, you can check out some of my earlier videos where I explain why I'm doing it like this. I think it's appropriate in this case, at least I think so, but I'm definitely open to hearing alternatives to that. Someone says, happy birthday. It's my wedding anniversary, so thanks for that, but it's actually my 10-year wedding anniversary. Someone says, thanks for the patience. Someone again asked what resources I used. Please put that in the comments. I want to look up and give you some links, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. Put it in the comments and I'll give you a better answer. Someone says, hello, geeks. Okay, we have a couple more people saying the same thing. What route do you take to teach yourself? Throw it in the comments and I'll give you a much better answer. I'll think it out and type it out with some links for you. Why did you drop web development? I'll tell you why I dropped web development. I took way too many credits. I think I was taking 23 credit hours that semester, which I don't know how credit hours work in universities around the world, but at least in the United States, a normal full-time schedule is considered, it's 12 credit hours. So I was almost double what they consider full-time, so that was a lot for me. Also, the teacher of that course had a really heavy accent, and I had a hard time understanding him. I'm usually pretty good with accents, but I just had a hard time. And what he was teaching, I knew enough about web development at that point to realize what he was teaching was several years out of date, and I didn't like that. So I needed to drop a class anyway because it was too overwhelming, so that was on the top of the list. Someone says they have dreams with me coding. I'm the same way. I'm definitely the same way. That's cool. Sometimes I actually dream up solutions that really work. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So I think it's cool. All right. Someone... I'm going to have to cut this off soon because I'm getting to the bottom of the live stream and then more, I get more comments. So I'm going to say this is the last set. Whatever's on the screen here at the bottom, this is the last set that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to have to cut it off. Someone says they're a support analyst trying to transition out of support into development. I have completed a bachelor's degree, Oracle certified, developed an Android app, but no dev experience. How do I transition successfully? I would say build some side projects, learn as much as you can, build some side projects, or get some paid freelance work if you can. You can also contribute to open source projects on GitHub, and that'll build up your portfolio. That's really all you need. If you have a good portfolio, that's what employers want to see the most. At least employers that know what they're doing when they hire a developer. The most important thing is, can this person do the job, and have they proven it by their previous projects? That's what I would work on if I were you. That's what I look for when I'm looking at resumes to hire developers. The most important thing to me is the experience. Just show me what you've built. My Twitter, somebody asked for my Twitter handle. It's in the description of this video. Okay, how to handle errors in the fetch response. Maybe we can go over that in a later video. Okay, so I'm going to cut that off now because this video has gone super long and it's going to be intimidating for people who are going to want to rewatch it. I'll have to make a note that the last half hour or so is all kind of question and answer session. But thanks for all the engagement. I think this is by far like the most active live chat that I've had in the video, and I really like that. And I like that so many of you have said, you're finding this valuable. And I really want your feedback. So I'm pretty new to live streaming. I'm sure I could be doing this, a lot better. So any advice you can give me, put it in the comments, direct message me on Twitter. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll be back on Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'll schedule the event before I leave today, so it'll be on the channel and you'll see it, but it'll be a different time than normal. So I had a great time with you guys today. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I'll be back on Monday.